Have you ever seen a video attract one of the most polarizing rivalries in pop culture and have them acting more friendly with each other? Have you ever seen a matchup idea with a normally niche fight dynamic done so well that it got people craving for more matchups to follow said dynamic? Have you ever seen a YouTube video make #1 on both YouTube's trending page, back when it existed, and Twitter's trending page within 2 hours after its premiere, with the latter naming it as the fight everyone has been talking about? Have you ever seen a viral video receive its own Know Your Meme page over one small scene? Have you ever seen the unbridled praise of a video successfully overshadow the vocal minority of toxic power scaling discourse despite everything that could have gone wrong? Well, last year, Death Battle managed to do all of those things and prove how a good video can overpower negativity and discourse. And it's within their most beloved video of recent memory, if not of all time, Bowser vs. Eggman.
What do you mean, most beloved? This isn't my favorite episode. As a matter of fact, I hate Bowser vs. Eggman. Death Battle has so many objectively better episodes than this one because my opinion is the only one I care about. You have so many people glazing this episode so much already. We don't need any more. This episode is overrated because I said so. It's clearly my subjective opinion, but I'm gonna act like it's a fact because I'm not secure enough to admit that
Why are you doing the straw man thing?
Because you were going to do that anyway. Tell me I'm lying.
I was trying to avoid that for once. I'm pretty sure you just destroyed the premise of my video.
Oh, Johnny boy, you're going to thank me later. Besides, we all know that Bowser vs. Eggman isn't quite your favorite episode. So wouldn't that destroy your premise enough as is?
Yes and no. I've already talked about my current favorite death battle, roughly as long as this one, and I even have friends, acquaintances, and mutuals who've said that there are episodes that they like more than Bowser vs. Eggman. So I'm clearly not trying to call it the best death battle on an objective level, but let's not lie. This episode was a long time coming. It involves two of the most iconic villains in video game history, which alone would be enough to get at least some people talking about it. But even within the death battle community, not only did it hold the title as the only good Mario vs. Sonic-themed matchup years before its confirmation, but both characters were demanded to be brought back because of how dirty they were done for different reasons. Bowser's last episode was all the way back in Season 3, when he fought Ganondorf, who he not only lost to, but also got hit with a Ganon win con that the episode never brought up until the conclusion, as well as the lamest genre of no limits fallacy. Yeah, shout and get Castlevania, you blithering pawns. Eggman was also done dirty, but kind of for different reasons. Eggman vs. Wily is still one of my favorite death battles ever, even with the context of it being a Season 1 episode. But at the end of the day, it's still a Season 1 episode, and it had the weirdest verdict ever. Like, they said that Metal Sonic would solo everybody because... and that it doesn't even count as a win for Eggman because... This means that this was also the first time Death Battle has done a loser versus loser fight. Yeah, that surprised me too. They've had losers on the show before, even having them winning a later episode. But in terms of previous loser versus previous loser, this was the first one. Unless one wants to take some mental gymnastic lessons in the mental clinic and argue Gogeta versus Vegito. But if that's the case, then there's probably a good reason why they're in the mental clinic in the first place. This added stakes to the episode that I don't think I've seen matched anywhere else. 2 units with a lingering threat of an invitation to the O2 Club, and it just so happens to be a matchup that's incredibly complicated and can go either way. Partially because Death Battle insisted on structuring it like this, because this was one of those give them everything they've ever had type of episodes. Okay, not literally everything, like, they didn't give Bowser his Seizure Palace Hotel from Hotel Mario, nor did they give Eggman Has Bean from Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine, but they got more than anyone could have ever expected. Personally, I'm not used to seeing things like Bowser getting the Grand Stars or Eggman getting the Phantom Ruby, at least not before I started looking into the debate. And that's to say nothing of the fact that it was going to be an army fight, which gave King Boo and Infinite to Bowser and Eggman respectively, where the former is debatably not even a part of Bowser's actual army, and the latter's a dead fraud. But what if I told you that this entire approach was a result of the Death Battle community asking it to be as such? There are multiple reasons why people wanted this matchup to be an army fight, and to ease you into it, I gotta do that video essay trope of seemingly random tangent that is actually super relevant to the video, trust me guys. But don't worry, I'll be nimble and quick. I feel like there's been a massive desire to see another army fight on the show, almost to a fault, or if there isn't, I wouldn't be surprised if it would come soon. And to go into a personal story of mine, I once heard someone try to sell me on the Shredder versus M. Bison. At first I was all like, ooh, a fight between two psycho-powered martial artists who seek world domination? Tell me more! But apparently the more in question was what the main selling point actually was, which was that it could be an army fight between the Foot Clan and Shadaloo, and immediately I rolled out the red flags for this one. It started feeling more like somebody wanting an army fight for one character and just assuming it would instantly work perfectly for the other. I still think that Shredder vs. M. Bison is an interesting idea, but it was ignoring what I consider to be the fundamental rules for setting up an interesting army fight, which leads into why Bowser vs. Eggman works so seamlessly as an army fight. In theory, you could do this matchup with just the two characters. Yeah, Eggman would have to hop between mechs as Bowser would try to tear through them, but you could still make a fight out of it. Whether or not it'd be interesting is up to interpretation, but including their armies adds much more than you would expect it to, which you can't say for every matchup. Like, I could literally make a case for my favorite versus matchup of all time, Ragnar vs. Velvet, being an army fight if I wanted to. In fact, I'll make that case on screen right now, but could you really say it would add that much? Oh, and before anyone starts saying that the justifications I posted on screen wouldn't actually work, I know. I just wanted to see if you know. Death Battle has done 2 army fights before Bowsegg. Eggman vs. Wily was an army fight because it was their main arsenal, at least for the dynamic. Ultron vs. Sigma also had an army fight, but it was off screen. And that's because, to be blunt, you really didn't need an army fight just because you could have one. So when it comes to deciding when an army fight makes sense, I like to bring up 3 different questions that require a yes to justify it. Question 1, are their armies integral and/or recognizable enough to have prominence? For Eggman, definitely. But can you say the same for Bowser? I would argue yes. Bowser's definitely more up close and personal than Eggman is, but his minions have demonstrated a lot more association to Bowser than people think. In cutscenes, artwork, even lore, the Koopa Troop is often depicted standing alongside Bowser at all times. And even if this weren't the case, Bowser being a part of an army fight is still perfectly reasonable because his minions are the most iconic mooks in all of fiction. Assuredly, as far as gaming is concerned. Everyone knows what a Goomba looks like, or a Koopa, or a Piranha Plant, or a Boo, or a Shy Guy, or a Bob-omb, or a Magic Koopa, or a Cheep Cheep. You get the idea. In fact, I didn't even bother showing PNGs on screen because doing as much as saying their name out loud is more than enough to instantly give you, the viewer, an image of them, even if you're just listening to this video in the background while you're doing something else. As for what you could possibly be doing, I think I already know. Question 2. Are the armies in any way comparable? This one is relatively complicated and probably the most subjective to answer, but it can be easily streamlined by comparing some key members. Eggman vs. Wily had several trailers for the buildup of this, though sadly those trailers are all lost media unless there's an archive of them I'm unaware of. But I do remember the units that were being compared just as well as you remember to like this video, subscribe to my channel, leave a comment saying something funny, and join my membership program. The connections between the units in each trailer were very simple to understand. They didn't need to be super thematic or anything, so long as they conveyed the role that they served in their respective army. Bowser vs. Eggman's waiting period even had these types of trailers showcasing the most heavy-hitting soldiers of each army, specifically Kamek, Bowser Jr., Metal Sonic, and Sage. It may seem strange to compare these guys, but once you start thinking about the roles they play in their army and how they were worked into the fight, it starts to come together. With Kamek vs. Metal Sonic, both are the most beneficial trump cards of each army due to their incredible power. And what do you know, we see that connection come to fruition in the fight. Bowser Jr. vs. Sage is a little more obvious of a connection. They're both the children of the generals who specifically help out with tactics and power-ups. And what do you know, we see that connection come to fruition in the fight. I could even see some parallels between many other facets of their armies and even aspects of their arsenals, like how they have units and items that can warp reality, as well as some units that are very silly, or how they have power boosters that can be used by their armies or by themselves. While these don't mean they would work as standalone matchups, in the context of an army fight, these all help to add cohesion between each unit to flesh out the connections and fight dynamic of the matchup. Question 3. Do their armies add something substantial to the dynamic that you couldn't do with these two by themselves? Bowser vs. Eggman can still work with just the two, but a lot of the fighting would amount to Bowser tears through Eggman's mech, it ends up being a decoy, the real Eggman didn't stand up, instead showing up in a new mech, rinse and repeat until you decide to pick a winner. Again, it's functional, but it doesn't exactly play to Eggman's strengths nearly as well as it plays to Bowser's, but when you include their armies, it does. Bowser's game plan would remain relatively unchanged, but Eggman would excel in his strengths as a tactician and manipulator. And on top of that, the armies add a new dynamic that you wouldn't get on their own. The soldiers' unwavering loyalty to their king versus the meticulously placed pawns of a scheming genius. This makes the fight much more debatable than it would be otherwise, and admittedly, more exhausting too. Like, the G1 prediction blog is over 100,000 words long. That's at minimum 10,000 words longer than the f***ing Hobbit. Yeah, there's a lot to this matchup, which is why some people just threw their hands up in the air, express how they just don't care, and decide to not take the debate so seriously and prioritize having fun, which was certainly the case for me. I know that this waiting period was way worse for other people. It is still a Mario vs. Sonic matchup after all. But from my end, it was mainly just epic memes of random abilities and arsenals, and unironically epic fan art. Though I am just kind of speaking for myself mainly, as I was preparing for the premiere of the first Mario vs. Sonic matchup in over 6 years. Constructed by DJ Tiki, brought to life by Moro, and massively popularized by the audience, for better or for worse. Now, let's finally get it on. What I really like about both of these analyses is how there's an equal amount of importance given to the combatant and their armies. This gives the analysis a natural blending of verses and story coverage as is, but it also never takes away from the arsenal of magic and science at their disposals. As I said earlier, the Koopa Troop and Eggman Empire are intrinsic to their leaders, so if they were covered in the same way that Eggman vs. Wily did it, where it was mainly for semi-elaborate roll call at most, it wouldn't be nearly as interesting. But thankfully, Bowser's analysis is interesting. Very much so, as a matter of fact. Covering Bowser's desires and goals with how they're always in conflict with the princess's heart magic and those pesky plumbers. Huh, I wonder what that's for. And then they cover the Koopa Troop and how each has a distinct role to create a well-balanced army. And then it gets described as a family unit, specifically one that Bowser has a reluctant soft spot for. And then they cover his arsenal to demonstrate what he has to protect his army. This structure is perfect with somehow better execution, in no small part thanks to the editing by DJ Tiki. It's not as fancy as some of his other works, but it has a lot of character to it with the Super Mario font cards and sound effects, as well as some excellent and subtle transitions. And that's to say nothing of the charming sprite animations by Origin the PogChamp, or the god-tier 3D renders by Jumpin' Jets. They even snuck in a few blink and you'll miss it gags here and there.
Goombas, Koopas, 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 Koopas.
Not even DJ can hide shit from me. But of course, there is the part everyone remembers, how the ending note of his analysis ties it all together by framing Bowser's ambitions as something different than what's on the surface. In other words, how his army is just straight up a real-ass family. And speaking as a self-proclaimed Nintendo character scholar, I do feel like people tend to get caught up in this framing of Bowser to a point where he's actually not that bad of a guy. Not that I blame anyone, as the appeal of Bowser, to me at least, is that he's this tyrant with a ferocious design and ego, constantly being at odds with his inner silliness, airheaded demeanor, and love for his kids. But I feel like it somewhat disillusions people into thinking that he's an unserious goofball as opposed to a tyrant. Yeah, we all love seeing iconic villains have their evilness contrasted by them being a shockingly good father, but keep in mind that this is the same person who traveled back in time to when Mario and Luigi were babies to kidnap them, along with other babies, and abuse their inner power to conquer the universe. I don't think my dad would ever do something like that. I've always viewed Bowser as a tryhard, someone with a lot of pride for himself and his soldiers that constantly gets put down a peg by how unserious the rest of the world seems to be, often due to his own ambitions getting the better of him by his habit of underestimating the cheery, pure-hearted nature of the Mushroom Kingdom and the Plumbers. But with that said, his ferocity ironically juxtaposes that juxtaposition of him with how he can become somehow much more than his initial design already fooled you into thinking. When he locks in, he's just as formidable as any other tyrant, if not more. And even the death battle analysis paints Bowser exactly like this, specifically with 2 little words.
Dark magic.
Wiz's delivery of this is to capture that very juxtaposition. For how goofy and colorful the series normally is, it can be shocking to see that the main antagonist specializes in something like dark magic, let alone his kids also being proficient in it. The way it's used in the analysis is how dark magic is something Bowser and much of his army can use, and then describe how high it can reach in scale, and thus framing Bowser as someone who looks fierce on the surface, and while he has plenty of moments of weakness, he has just as many moments of cruelty. I've been interpreting Bowser like this for years, so it's nice to see Death Battle vindicating me for this, even if it means that they're also indirectly validating my Thon arc for Shea Frillis Productions. No matter where I go, my past always comes back to grab a beer with me. But now's the part where we start talking about Eggman's analysis. Bowser is generally a more liked character, with me being within that generalization, but despite that, I feel that Eggman's analysis is the superior of the two, and I can elaborate on that with the visuals alone. Look, I'm not gonna pretend that I don't have slippery shoes on me, but I will at least try to get on a soapbox and say that I feel that the editing of Death Battle Analyses have gone slightly underappreciated. Just slightly. Yeah, there are plenty of Death Battle fans who praise the editing, but you never see them engaging with it in a review or analysis like how they engage with the animation or even the writing. I've said this before, but I do video editing for a living, and no, it's not from this YouTube channel. If anything, I make more money editing for other people's channels than I do my own, since I'm always looking for more work. Cough, cough. I bring this up because a lot of the work video editors do goes largely unseen. I've recently been making a meme of how DJ spends hours creating the hardest edits that you don't even see for a full second, possibly even half a second, but believe it or not, with this type of editing, that's pretty commonplace. So that's just me going,
Oh, wow! That is relatable!
And at the risk of revealing the magician's secrets, masking makes up the vast majority of the edits you'll see in Death Battle episodes. And that can be way more time consuming than you would expect, especially with how often you'll have to go back and forth between different softwares, depending on what you're using. I mean, I guess if you, say, mask out a single panel and move it on screen, it's not that difficult. But for the Death Battle-esque comic book editing you see in Analyses, well, you're gonna need to do way more than just masking with a few nodes. And unless if you have something like DaVinci Resolve Studio Magic Mask or whatever your software's equivalent is, there's a whole lot of nodes to keep track of, and you gotta make sure they all perfectly fit each frame. Hell, this one masking edit I made for one of my videos took me 3 days to finish just because of how many nodes I had to manage. It's already a pretty long process with Marvel or DC superheroes, but try doing these edits for Sonic characters, who have much more unique shapes and more mixtures of straight and round edges. It's a lot harder to breeze through the masking here, I'll tell you that much. I mean, I literally can tell you that much, because some of my commissions have involved Sonic IDW fan projects specifically. Don't bother looking for these videos yet, as they haven't officially premiered, and won't for a while. And I'm also not gonna say what client this is for, but just know that I can absolutely vouch for this.
Thing, why the does your tail have to be so long?
Even a seemingly simple edit like this took me a good few hours to put together, not counting the arduous amount of cropping and painting I had to do when working with this comic page in Photoshop. So when I say that DJ making an edit like this from a panel like this, or making an edit like this from all of these pages is impressive, then I'm saying it's pretty fucking impressive. Though, for the record, it's not even just the comic book editing. There are plenty of edits that composite PNGs and video clips with effects that not only look really nice, but even portray some brilliant visual storytelling. From the beginning with the Gerald edits between the ice wall punching and this godlike shadow edit of Gerald getting smaller and smaller as Eggman smiles, to this shot of Eggman looking outside the window to see 2 different shots of Frontiers' ending. In fact, you know what? I'm gonna say what I don't think anyone else is willing to say. Video editing is functionally a valid form of art. Yes, art. And the visual storytelling can be made even stronger with good writing. And as I said before, I think Eggman's analysis is written better than Bowser's. Similar to Bowser's goofiness, I do feel like Eggman's evil nature gets exaggerated by some people. He's had his moments of silliness, arguably just as much as Bowser has, if not more. And the fact that he still calls himself Eggman despite initially preferring to be called Robotnik should be pretty telling that he's leaning into the silliness a bit. But fortunately, the episode gives a more nuanced perspective of Eggman as a character. Though I will say that one tiny problem I have is their explanation of why Ivo distanced himself from Gerald's footsteps. Look, is Ivo a narcissist? Yes. Did he stop looking up to Gerald as a genius? Yes. Did he feel neglected following Maria's death? Yes. But was this what motivated him to rise as a dictator? Maybe. I can't say if that's true or false. But it does overlook how distraught he was when he learned that Gerald sought to destroy humanity following Maria's death. It is an interesting story beat to think about, but is it necessary to bring up? Probably not. Like I said, tiny problem, as the way they contextualize Eggman's character is astounding nonetheless. Wiz idolizing him was a really fun writing choice that helps add some banter where Wiz is glazing his scientific genius, and Boomstick is the one to remind the viewer that he's still a mad scientist with some subtle word choices, as well as some lampshading here and there. One specific form of lampshading is saying that he has no friends, no family, no wife. I know exactly why you put in that clip. I honestly can't stand Snapcube Sonic dubs, yet sneaks like this I find really funny and endearing. God bless. I also like how each machine, Badnik, and more are framed as experiments that Eggman tries out for different situations, being used to subtly highlight Eggman's tenacity and calculations. Some as successes, some as failures, and some as something more. And this is where we get into scratch and ground and wrenching, baby! That means they have to be in the fight. I mean, I did ask DJ about it on Twitter and he never deconfirmed it, so it's totally gonna happen, guys, trust! Unlike Bowser, where his strongest abilities and troops were saved for last, Sage is one of Eggman's least powerful robots, at least in terms of attack potency, but it's the most impactful one. They say what type of impact she had on his character, and then they followed this up by covering the times where his reluctant trust led him to helping Supersonic overcome the end, which is followed up with a lot of supersonic feats and a general rundown of the Chaos Emerald's power. This aspect of the analysis works because it frames Eggman as something that became more than a narcissistic scientist. Similarly to how they framed Bowser as an airheaded tyrant with a major soft spot for his army, they framed Eggman as someone who felt underappreciated to a point where he literally built the attention he felt he deserved, until he accidentally succeeded in that goal so well that he has no idea how to process it. It helps the viewer appreciate his scientific prowess, make fun of his low points, but still find the empathy for his most shocking success. I mean, yeah, it does almost instantly get lampshaded at the end, but I don't mind it here. Because just like Eggman himself, we don't know where this newly found empathy would lead him. He could change for the better, but he could also relapse. Maybe he could even do both, depending on the story. Either way, I cannot wait to see how the IDW comics handle Sage, as there's definitely a lot to explore here. But maybe we should wait on that, because y'all know that it's time for a death battle. Normally, this would be the part where I go scene by scene, describe what's happening, and explain how it enhances the fight. And while I won't shy away from that style, I don't think it's as necessary as it has been before. Instead, I would like to take a bit of a different approach as I dive into a talking point I've heard people bring up when discussing this episode. Eggman doesn't do a whole lot. I've even seen people dub it as Bowser featuring Eggman, or even Bowser featuring Metal Sonic, with Eggman as a background extra, I guess. Oh, and before anyone accuses me of strawmanning the small number of people that dislike this episode, I'm not. If anything, it's a sentiment I've seen shared by far more fans of the episode than dislikers. Specifically in an I still love what we got but I wanted to see more kind of way. And those are the people I'm going to be disagreeing with here, though I can absolutely empathize with this statement. I would have wanted to see Eggman using another mech or two, and more of his gadgets for some more AoE attacks on the Koopa Troop, even if it was nice to see the alternate scenarios knowing that they weren't supposed to be there. Like, it only took Moro a day to make all of them. That's it. One day. Though I do think it's worth noting that the episode was always ice-skating an uphill battle of making sure the spotlight gets shared equally among the named combatants, their named generals, as well as the other foot soldiers. And when you look at what Bowser and Eggman do individually, it can paint a peculiar picture. Eggman uses the Egg Dragoon drills and bullets, a decoy, the Death Egg robot, a jetpack, and a gun. Hey, I'm sure it could definitely do something to Bowser in base. Even if counting those last two things feels kinda cheap, I can still understand why he would use it at the moment. Besides, I would need to be charitable anyway, because Bowser uses his Fire Breath, Frightmare Balls, Geokinesis, Gravity Manipulation, Lightning Magic, Falling Spike, Grand Stars, Dry Bowser Reanimation, and Vacuum Inhale. Even if you count the Egg Dragoon scene as doing two different things, that's still a decent bit more than what Eggman brings out on his own. Though, in case you're wondering why I excluded Fury Bowser, it's because I'm counting that as more of a Bowser Jr. thing. That is how the story goes, after all. And along with the Fury Bowser paint, Jr. also uses Transmutation and Shadow Mario. And as for other characters from both sides, Kamek uses his item swapping and reality warping to summon a bunch of warp pipes that bend backwards. Sage uses telekinesis, a force field, and the Death Egg via powering it up with the Chaos Emeralds. Metal Sonic is the character that's considered the highlight of the episode, at least for the Eggman Empire, but he doesn't do nearly as much as people like to think. He uses a homing attack, powers up into Neo and Super Neo, protects himself with the Black Shield, and copies Bowser's breath attack. Everything else is just basic blitzing, punches, and kicks that any other Sonic character could do on their own, possibly including Eggman, depending on the mech. Don't get me wrong, Metal was great in this episode, but for a character that is hyped up as possibly the coolest part of the fight and was given a bigger spotlight than what was planned, he really doesn't use that much of his arsenal. In fact, Eggman technically uses a little more. Though I understand that the point being made is that Metal's accomplishments are greater than what Eggman does directly, but I still think there's some nuance to this that I feel might be overlooked. There is a major difference in how Bowser and Eggman lead their teams. Bowser is much more hands-on, while Eggman is more of a chess master. It does go into the fight dynamic mentioned earlier, though I acknowledge that people have acted like Eggman is significantly more reliant on his army than Bowser is, assuming that Eggy doesn't take matters into his own hands. Not only is that last point provably untrue by playing literally any Sonic game, but let's not pretend that Bowser never relies on his army. Remember that most of his special moves in the Mario RPGs he's playable in directly involve his army doing the fighting for him. Though to be fair, the Sonic IDW comics have had Eggman using his army for his strategies just as much as he's willing to throw hands with characters like Surge. But that said, even if Eggman himself doesn't do as much as I would have liked, his influence is still very prevalent throughout the entire fight. Once again, being more akin to IDW Eggman, where he's more behind the scenes, but everything his army does is clearly based on Eggman's orders. Infinite may have been the one to use the Phantom Ruby, but it was Eggman who ordered Infinite to use it, just as it was Eggman who lured Bowser to an area where it would be effective against him and as much of the Koopa Troop as possible. Sage may have been the one who used the Chaos Emeralds to power up the Death Egg, but again, by Eggman calling the shots, who also made sure to keep it hidden as a last resort. Metal Sonic may have taken out Kamek and Bowser in his base form, but that was because Eggman knew Metal Sonic could eliminate many of the heavy hitters. There was an Egg Robo backing Metal up, given how much of the Koopa Troop was going after the Phantom Ruby as well. The Eggman Empire is admittedly pretty aimless without a leader. Even the episode brings this up. So seeing any teamwork at all means that someone has to be making orders, and I don't think it's Metal Sonic. Even though he's perfectly capable of doing so, but he's not the one making the orders here. Also, I think that there's a pretty clear difference between throwing hands with the lightweight 3 or 4 foot mammal and a ginormous 10-foot dragon turtle with sharp claws, a spiky shell, and a breath of fire. So naturally, Eggman is going to fight from a distance because he went in with an understanding of Bowser's overwhelming strength. So his game plan should be about moving Bowser towards disadvantageous positions. Even though Bowser wins, it wasn't because Bowser was consistently one-upping Eggman in its strategy. It's not even because he was plowing through Eggman's tactics. Rather, every single time Eggman gets put in a bad spot, it's because he's underestimating the rest of Bowser's army. He was taken aback by the Fury Bowser form because he didn't think Bowser Jr. could bring him back like that. He was shocked to see the Eggmobile and Death Egg getting transmutated because he thought destroying the whole army would have been that easy. Though, don't misconstrue what I've been saying so far, I still wish that the Death Egg robot got to do more. Whether it was to shoot lasers like in the storyboards, or shoot the rocket fist like what Moral's extension proposal would feature. He says that it was cut to keep it between 3 minutes to 3.5 minutes. Even though the fight is 4.5 minutes long, but I reckon that time restraints had something to do with it. But with that said, the Death Egg robot's purpose in this scene is still apt because it was also used defensively. Think about it like when Tony Stark brings out the Hulkbuster armor, if you will. Even if he could handle Hulk with several other armors, it would be safer to use a suit with a high amount of defense. And given how the fight has been going up to this point, I think it's safe to assume that it was an intentional part of the dynamic. Though I will say that there is one moment where this episode's dynamic doesn't work for me, but I think I'll save that for later. So instead, let's shift over to the other army and highlight how they're characterized. To me, Bowser is a character who is so stubborn in everything he does and believes in that he can come across as passionate and menacing, but also egocentric and airheaded. He'll try to win through any means necessary, which can lead him to being either a savage beast or an easily flustered klutz. The death battle characterizes him with the best combination of both, where you can feel all of these aspects of Bowser's character, but without fully leaning into one or the other. And one of the clearest examples of this is through Zach Watkins' brilliant voice direction. When the fight starts, his voice sounds more guttural and his tone sounds aggressively pompous.
What a joke! You call these toys an invasion force? I've seen Toads do better.
But as the fight progresses, specifically when Fury Bowser comes out, his voice is much growlier and his tone is much more menacing and violent.
Showtime! How dare you keep your hands off my...
His expressions and poses reflect this as well. At first they're kind of exaggerated, almost to the expense of his character. While he does keep the angry eyebrows on his face as long as he can, they're often overtaken by the goofy expressions and fluctuating posture. Then when Fury Bowser and Dry Bowser come into play, by virtue of the former having no irises and the latter having much more limited expressions, Bowser feels much fiercer by proxy. So all of this means that the animation gave us a natural transition where his writing went from the modern goofball dad Bowser to the classic monstrous Bowser. It works for the fight progression and escalation, It works for capturing Bowser's true character, and it works for an enticing animation, even if my interpretation of his personality was different. And similarly, Eggman's personality is represented really well. He always feels like he has a backup plan and secretly one step ahead of Bowser. Egg Dragoon's guns get taken out, he responds with the drill. Metal Sonic gets kicked away, Eggman prepares himself to tank Bowser's onslaught instead of trying to beat him outright, hence why he's stepping backwards instead of forwards, so he can keep himself stable just long enough until he's able to find the opening he needs. Metal Sonic gets obliterated? Hey, as long as he has the Chaos Emeralds, he should still be in the fight, and Sage can do just as much with his remaining resources. His tenacity from the games and comics is on full display throughout the fight, never showing a moment of weakness even when a wrench gets thrown into his plans. The scrap banter from the beginning of the fight may have been missed, but given that the Eggman is a decoy, the lack of response from Eggman was foreshadowing this moment for a bit, and is also reflective of how he's viewing the Koopa Troop as a whole. That is, until the ending, where he sees the Death Egg get turned into a block, but his moment of weakness is out of concern for Sage, thinking that something may have happened to her. That character study from Eggman's analysis gets a lot of payoffs in the fight through ways that you wouldn't expect, and I'm glad to see such a take on Eggman's character this creative. Now, this next paragraph of the script will be less focused than the others because it's more of a rundown of smaller things the fight did that I just think are neat. The stormy setting that grows bigger and bigger as the fight goes on was caused because of Bowser's lightning magic. There are multiple moments where you can get a subtle view of the clouds, but the darker ones only fill the sky after Bowser summons lightning. This means that this iconic shot of Fury Bowser and the DER was being built up to. It even enhances the animation, given how it helps the Death Egg robot's appearance look far more menacing with than without, and it even works as a loose reference because it matches the environment Fury Bowser has fought in Bowser's Fury. The chance time moment is the final step in the rule of 3. Mario Party is first brought up as a fun joke in Bowser's analysis, then again as another fun joke when they discuss what Kamek can do with his magic, and then it's used for one last joke in the fight when Bowser gets the Phantom Ruby. Further proof that the Koopa Troop is full of rats and schemers and toads. Despite my initial downplaying, Metal Sonic got to be really cool in this fight. His Neo transformation is framed very similarly to his reveal from the IDW comics. The camera panning hiding his silhouette was a stroke of genius, while also showing a really fun brief character moment of Bowser where he just effortlessly destroys an egg robot by lifting his arm a little bit. And Super Neo's appearance, I'm just gonna say it, best time the Chaos Emeralds have ever been used. Every other time Death Battle's brought out the Chaos Emeralds, you know exactly when they're gonna show up. The first time they were used, Shadow just transformed because he needed to match Super Saiyan somehow. Other times they were used, of course it was gonna happen because they're getting overwhelmed, or their opponent powered up in a form that they gotta match somehow, or a Chaos Emerald was already a part of the pseudo-narrative. None of these examples hinder the episode, mostly, nor are they inherently bad uses of Sonic's super forms, mostly. But this one I think is better than all of them because there was an effort to make them feel like a surprise reveal that it arguably didn't need. Metal got launched out of the fight, probably still fine, but not able to protect Eggman at this point. But when he comes back, he now has the Chaos Emeralds with him, being one of those reveals that isn't a super obvious thing he would do, but one that makes so much sense to the viewer when it arrives. And did he remember to punch Kamek in the face? Atta boy! Get that busted ass Hax brick out of this multiverse! And thinking about it now, Sage only showing up after Bowser gets knocked out by Metal Sonic inclines me to believe that Eggman didn't want Sage involved until he thought the fight would be in his hands. I might be looking a little too deep into things, but would it surprise you if this was intentional? The ending is confirmed to be the coin block producing an infinite number of coins that revives the fallen soldiers from Bowser's army. Not only is this a cool touch, but it's also something that has technically happened in the Mario series before, albeit it was through the Dreamstone, but they did play a factor into the verdict, so I would have no trouble believing that Kamek's magic would replicate something like that. Oh, and speaking of you, I like the fact that it means you technically died right here, given that the analysis described Dry Bowser as Bowser reanimating his undead skeleton. So when Bowser holds off the Death Egg's laser for a time, he's literally putting his life on the line, especially with how big of a crater it leaves in the area and... What the hell are you doing here? Okay, remember when I said there was an aspect of the fight's dynamic that didn't work for me? This is that moment right here. As to me, it almost feels like a continuity error. To show you that I'm not taking anything out of context, Sage powers up the Death Egg, aims it at Bowser's army, knowing he's already overpowered the Chaos Emeralds in his current state. And as Bowser shields his army from the laser, Eggman flies out of the way maniacally laughing. So why is it that the next time we see him, he's on the ground outside of the Eggmobile and panting like he narrowly escaped? Like, for how fantastic the flow of the choreography was beforehand, this moment sorely stuck out to me, and I've never heard anyone else point this out despite some reviews mentioning much smaller animation errors that even I failed to notice until analyzing it frame by frame, during the editing process, by the way. Like, this may just amount to a small nitpick I have, but I think that it gives the writing a small but discolored blot on its pages. And it's not like it would have taken much to wipe down, just have Eggman get hit in the air as he's flying away. If anything, that probably would have made Junior's reveal slightly stronger. Only slightly, because yeesh, I don't think I've seen Junior look this more badass in anything outside of this moment in the death battle. Oh wait, there's one more scene that I haven't talked about in.
Boo! You mother...
I don't think even Time Huh Thanks for the Tip reached the level of death battle memery as this scene of Infinite getting thwomped. This moment went viral across the entire internet. It got its own Know Your Meme page. It got attention from lessons in meme culture. It got Thwomp trending on Twitter for a while. It boosted the views of Infinite's theme from Sonic Forces on YouTube just so people could post Thwomp memes in the comments. Oh, in the fan art. Oh my Lanta, the fan art. Some of them were meme templates and death battle thumbnails, but some people went harder than they had any right or reason to. Even I joined in on the action. And the fact that this isn't even the first time Infinite got bent over a tree stump by a Thwomp in a Bowser vs. Eggman army fight animation makes this even more amazing. And yes, the reference was intentional, albeit it was from John Mitchell drawing it in the storyboards rather than Morrow animating it himself, though he certainly recognized it. It's also shockingly accurate to how Infinite is handled as a character. Not even the whole he does one cool thing and then gets jobbered almost immediately. I mean in the sense how the Phantom Ruby was already a pivotal moment in the animation. Infinite uses it to wipe out quite a bit of Bowser's army, and even Bowser himself is put on the back foot. However, King Boo mocks his own comrades for being unable to resist the Phantom Ruby's power, and then he dunks on Infinite in a way that's not just in character for him, but one that makes sense in the context of the scene. Infinite was using gravity manipulation with his reality warping, so the Thwomp crashing down on him is the best tool for a troll like King Boo to use. But it doesn't snuff out the effects of the Phantom Ruby. It got its time to shine, but something had to undo it sooner or later. And it's not like the Phantom Ruby is just instantly ignored after Infinite gets knocked out. And as if this wasn't gold enough, Morrow confirmed that Infinite didn't even die to the Thwomp, yet he decided to sit and sulk. Okay, that's just platinum at that point, my guy. Look, I like Infinite, but he is absolutely the fraudulent one. Infinite versus Sukuna when? Ah well, might as well talk about the music in the meantime. Wow, dude, the music composition major finally talks about another music composition. Really wish I did this more often. But I don't think you need me to tell you that the track starts off with a remix of Eggman's iconic vocal theme, which means that it's reflecting the classic rock vibe of the Sonic Adventure era while blending in some modern power metal riffs and black metal vocals from the funny Storm Man. Yeah, they just got him in this. That's neat. It also includes some synth licks in the background as a nod to Otani's electronic music from more recent Sonic games. The wiki claims that it's supposed to be referencing Infinite's theme, but I don't think that the synth pattern is the same here, so I'm pretty sure it's something else. While Mario games don't usually stray into this territory for its soundtracks, various Bowser themes absolutely have. Not only are the Fury Bowser themes explicitly metal music, but Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door's Bowser themes are rock remixes of classic Mario tunes. Mario sports games have given Bowser plenty of metal music. Bowser's victory theme from Smash 4 onward is a rock remix of the classic Mario victory theme. And even Bowser Castle courses from Mario Kart games get a rock theme from time to time. Like, Mario Kart 8's Bowser Castle theme is functionally a Guilty Gear track. But once Fury Bowser comes in, the song starts to add a choir in the background and even a chorus in the guitars, which is absolutely more of a Bowser-coded instrumental choice, because there are far more Bowser themes across the series that have more imposing choir sounds, specifically from the N64 era, once again supporting my theory that we go from modern Bowser to classic Bowser in the fight. But at the same time, Eggman's final boss themes do include some choir sounds every once in a while, like in Colors and Forces. And as for the melody, its texture is also very reminiscent of some classic Bowser level things that you should instantly recognize. Interesting lyrics, aren't they? Okay, these lyrics probably don't make too much sense at first, maybe they'll even sound corny, but it's one of those metal pieces meant to help visualize the war that's afoot, mentioning all of the steel and fire blazing across the Mushroom Kingdom, and describing the leaders as titans as they declare their goals. And there are also 3 special words that dominate the fight. It's used 4 times in different ways. The first time is synced up with Infinite showcasing the Phantom Ruby's ultimate strength, literally saying, "Behold the ultimate strength of the king." And given that he's using gravity manipulation, he's effectively forcing them to bow before him as well. Ingenious use of the lyrics right there. And the second time is synced up to when Bowser gets knocked out cold, as if Eggman is mocking him, saying, "Behold the king, ruler of a dying army, you blithering Gaponza!" And the third time is Metal Sonic getting a chance to say it, playing the same tune Infinite played earlier in the fight, where he intends to finish Bowser off now that Metal has gone super, insisting that the last thing Bowser will see is the strength of a king. But then it plays one last time when Bowser reanimates his skeleton, and just like this shot right here, it's meant to convey the feeling of, "Behold, the undying strength of a real king," as his army stands behind him. And if that ending Starman-esque riff is anything to go by, the king's got a long, invincible life to live. So long, Doctor!
The winner is Bowser.
Wait, I disagree. I disagree with that. Okay, do I still think this matchup can go either way? Yes. It's a hard-fought victory no matter what. Does Bowser winning with Death Battle's logic make valid sense? Generally, yes. Is the episode internally consistent? Yes. Is it cathartic to see Bowser winning after how dirty he got done last time? Absolutely. But does this mean I agree with the arguments being presented on paper? No. Though it does involve some outside factors. I normally avoid using outside factors because I believe it's better to judge a death battle for what's in it as opposed to what isn't. But that said, I already put my cards on the table, so for anyone who wants my personal, honest opinion, there. I'm well aware that I've elicited some perfectly calm and reasonable comments, but not only are you free to disagree with me, but none of these impact my enjoyment of the episode, nor are they emblematic of my true problems with the conclusion, to which there aren't many, but are still worth talking about. Breaking it down by categories, their arguments mostly make perfect sense in context of the episode's presented research. Given that they put both multiverses at infinite, you could argue that they were always equalizing their stats, but retroactively, the stats category says that they're multiplus with equal benefit of the doubt, but Bowser's finite numbers are consistently higher, meaning that the death battle is arguing that Bowser demonstrates his strengths more frequently. Eggman only being able to access one mech at a time is a disadvantage that I've always agreed with. Stuff like the Phantom Ruby and Chaos Emeralds I feel should even the playing field in this regard, but I get that Bowser can use his abilities more often and also mix and match them easier. Bowser's army having more adapted teamwork is backed up really well because the fight was already implementing that as a part of the core dynamic. I know that their overarching point was that Bowser's a better team player than Eggman, and I agree that the Eggman Empire is much more reliant on a leader, but given how Eggman was already framed as more of a behind-the-scenes tactician, I feel like the conclusion should have compared to how the Koopa Troops teamwork would work around Eggman manufacturing some teamwork amidst his army. And on a much more minor note, I just straight up don't agree with saying that Eggman can't even agree with himself. First of all, this scene they show is them arguing after they were already defeated. And second of all, they were working together just fine at every other point of the game. Again, doesn't hurt their argument much. I just felt the need to bring this up. With that said, there have been people who have claimed that this was reflective of the episode's overarching pseudo-narrative / agenda, but to that I have to ask, what narrative? Again, the majority of people bringing this up are fans of the episode, but for all the people claiming that Death Battle made Bowser the hero of the fight, or at least the lesser of the two evils, no they didn't. They still framed Bowser as a tyrannical villain, and if anything, framed Eggman with more sympathy because Bowser's familial bond with his army was framed as more of a reluctant soft spot, whereas Eggman's care for Sage was framed as something that had a much larger emotional impact on him. So like, why would the episode's writing act like Bowser's the lesser of the two evils when they never implied that? Like, look, I'm happy to see Death Battle fans expressing critical analysis more often, but with all due respect, I have no idea where this interpretation is coming from. Anyways, as for some bigger problems I have with conclusion, there's only one, so I should have just said for a bigger problem. Why did I write it like that? It's how they blatantly give Eggman a pity point. Some might think it's within the intelligence category since the advantage wasn't expanded upon all that much. All they really say is that Eggman is way smarter and is a proper tactician, whereas Bowser's really clumsy. They don't necessarily dive deep into how Eggman's intelligence could come into play, like how he could easily lure army into unfavorable positions and coordinate coordinate his army for a variety of strategies. Though, I guess I can understand why they decided to shorthand the intelligence category because, literally, who is arguing that Bowser is smarter than Eggman, and who would ever argue that? Like, I guarantee that even the most biased Mario fanboys and Sonic haters would have to admit that Eggman is smarter than Bowser. Nobody's trying to claim otherwise, and they still frame it as a real advantage in Eggman's favor. Nah, mate, the actual pity point is within the trump cards category, which might be surprising to hear given that it's put at a tie, and with how abstract the debate can get, I'm not against them calling it a draw. But then you listen to how they frame their argument, and they say Bowser could reverse the Metal Virus's effects with transmutation. The Phantom Ruby's reality warping is much more limited than the Wonder Flower, and also has far less range. The Dream Stones would effortlessly wish Super Neo Metal Sonic and even the Time Eater out of existence. Oh, and here's a scenario that we never bring up, but still imply that Bowser should just beat out regardless. Oh, so you're saying that Bowser actually wins the trump cards category?
Clearly, this is getting fairly abstract, and both had multiple options that could win the day instantly, so the safest bet is to call this category a tie.
Or not. It's not like in something like Dante vs. Bayonetta, where they remembered to word it in a way that Dante's Quicksilver style canceled out Witch Time instead of outright beating it. At no point do they say Eggman's trump cards can compete with Bowser's, nor do they bring up any trump cards that he has that could potentially overwhelm Bowser. Like, for a matchup that could go either way, they really didn't give Eggman nearly as much in his favor. And I know that Death Battle's research team's take on this matchup is far more nuanced than this. Oh, and before anyone says that this is me being nitpicky or that it's not that big of a deal, they're right. It's not a big deal to me. Sadly, that's not the case for everyone. Hang on a minute. Wade's strawman comment, the fact that he put that in at such a specific time. Wait a minute. That wasn't a strawman. It was a cold open the whole time? How could this episode have controversy with how many people adore it? Simple. There's a Mario vs. Sonic debate. They've historically been contentious. They're always gonna happen no matter where you go. Obviously, Bowser vs. Eggman isn't even 0.5% close to being as controversial as a certain green PTS demon, and there's still far more praise for the episode than criticisms. But I did say that the waiting period was outright miserable for some people, and this is why. Due to the nature of the episode's give them everything they've ever had approach, some people would be accusing Death Battle of ignoring something, or that they forgot to mention this other thing. My response to this claim will forever be the same. There is, at best, a 5% chance that they actually ignored or forgot something, and at minimum, a 95% chance that no, they did not ignore anything, they didn't forget whatever factor was mentioned, rather, the episode just didn't feel the need to bring it up because it's not going to change anything. Not in the sense that no one's allowed to disagree with them, or even that they'll never change their opinions at some point down the line, but expecting them to instantly do a 180 on their opinion because of like 1 or 2 factors that some random person on the internet brings up, that's just not how people work, let alone how versus debating works. This is why Death Battle debunk videos are so hard to take seriously sometimes. Even if there are some good ones every once in a while, the debunk in question tends to be about how Death Battle scaled this one thing slightly differently from someone else, therefore the whole thing is wrong, you gotta do it again! And there's also infers a bold assumption that Death Battle's entire research team unanimously agrees with every verdict with the exact logic used in an episode. And I, along with people who are much closer friends with the research team than I, will tell you firsthand that that's blatantly false, especially with matchups as complex as this. But let me explain why I'm not bothered by it despite disagreeing with the verdict. Have you ever seen a video attract one of the most polarizing rivalries in pop culture and have them acting more friendly with each other? Resetting the multiverse doesn't work on me. Yes, a well-written death battle is gonna mitigate a disagreeable verdict, but most normal people are able to separate the outcome from the overarching video. But depending on the person, their opinion on the verdict can still be soured regardless. But I'm not one of those people, and I'm going to acknowledge how the Death Battle team reaching this conclusion makes perfect sense. I said this matchup was debatable, I've always said that versus debating is subjective, and I'm going to be proving that right here. Though to be clear, I will be recontextualizing their verdict, not defending it. as defending it would imply that I agree with Bowser winning. I'm not gonna bloat this video any longer than I already have. I mean, I could go much longer if nobody wants to stop me. So to make things approachable, I'll stick with covering the alternate scenarios, some other comparisons the episode makes, and a couple of other things I thought would be interesting to talk about. And I'm going to be bringing up why nothing about the episode would change from not just a versus debating standpoint, but also from an animation standpoint. Remember, time and budget has to play a factor into each death battle. The only factor I could imagine changing anything would be Eggman using another mech. Depending on which one they pick, it could make the animation more interesting, and since Eggman would still be using one machine at a time, it would subtly strengthen the episode's argument while giving Eggman more things to do in the fight. Now let's discuss why the other comparisons wouldn't change anything. The Metal Virus versus Bowser's Transmutation. As I said before, Bowser's Transmutation magic is one of his best win conditions as is, but the Metal Virus is low-key kind of fraudulent in my opinion. Like, a major plot point of that arc is that Sonic was able to keep that process at bay just by running really fast. I'm not sure how much of Bowser's army would be fast enough to replicate this ability, if any of them could, but the main idea is that the Metal Virus does not instantly transmutate the target. Hell, there was even a point in time where Shadow was able to kick some Zomboss before he got infected. Just ignore how much of an idiot he was in that arc. Cowards run, you get bent! We also know that Bowser's transmutation is instantaneous, and while Eggman himself is immune to transmutation while he's in his Eggmobile, most of his army is not. So Bowser would be able to reverse the spread of the virus and turn Eggman's army into scrap metal, or even just manipulate its effects to strengthen Bowser's own army. I mean, if Super Silver was able to forcefully remove the virus across the entire population with his telekinesis, I'd imagine that Bowser or Kamek could do something similar with their magic. Oh, and they also implied that it could also reverse the spatial displacement tool, which, while I don't agree with personally, since I'm unsure how they would be able to transmutate particles that aren't even inside a body anymore, they also say it doesn't work when it's offline, so maybe they're giving Bowser some kind of other workaround here that I'm missing, but I digress. Lightman versus the Wonder Flower. Despite my disagreements with their respective potency and scale, the point of this comparison is, again, a matter of time. We see the Wonder Flower warping reality faster than the Phantom Ruby, which targets perceptions and then makes real-world effects. That, and the Wonder Flower's unpredictable nature gives it a wide variety of effects, like giving sentience to Eggman's tech, or creating island-sized monsters to fight for Bowser. Although the Wonder Flower could be cancelled out, so could the Phantom Ruby, and with its faster warping, they're arguing that could possibly affect the Phantom Ruby first. The Dreamstones versus the Time Eater. Really? Not Dreamstones versus Nightmare Eggman? Whatever. While the Time Eater is able to affect space-time more effectively, the specific wording they use is that the Dreamstones could wish it out of existence, meaning that it's a matter of out-haxing it. While the Dreamstones' potential is only as big as its cosmology, as I mentioned earlier, they put both at infinite multiversal, so it's safe to assume that they'd put the Dreamstones to that level and thus put it on equal footing with the Time Eater. Nightmare Eggman versus the Star Rod. Do I even need to talk about this one? Like, the episode didn't discuss it properly, so why should I? Bowser used the Star Rod to make himself invincible, so he could just do that. Though, maybe Nightmare Eggman could neutralize its power. I mean, it has happened before with the Star Spirits, though I feel like the Chaos Emeralds could do that anyway. I've never played Sonic Dream Team, so I can't even address this one in good faith. Oh, and from an animation standpoint, well, the alternate scenarios demonstrate exactly how they would play out if they were in the main scenario. So, for those complaining that they should have been in the main animation...
But why weren't they used in the main scenario? I don't care about alternate scenarios. I wanted to see it in the actual fight.
Invalid. Power Stars versus the Chaos Emeralds. Okay, this one's probably the biggest talking point of the debate, at least outside of the alternate scenarios, and even the episode admits that the Chaos Emeralds are more powerful. But their point is that the higher amount of Power Stars and Grand Stars means that Bowser would be able to access his power much longer. Think about it this way. Bowser has some Power Stars. Eggman nullifies their power with the Emeralds, but then Bowser uses Grand Stars to nullify the Emeralds. Then Metal goes Super Neo by tapping into the Master Emerald and just destroys Bowser's Grand Star. But then Bowser just gets another one to nullify Super Neo Metal Sonic, and then Eggman runs out of resources. Okay, maybe not the best demonstration, I'll admit, especially since the episode never claimed the Power Stars or Grand Stars could negate the Chaos Emeralds, but it's more about the war of attrition. And from an animation standpoint, I don't think I need to cover them because they were already a part of the animation. And we see a Grand Star-powered Fury Bowser overpower Super Neo Metal Sonic. Yoshi versus... I can't believe I had to say this one out loud. Yoshi versus the final Egg Blaster. I think the episode is implying that the final Egg Blaster's blast technically being off-screen means that it's unclear as to how many stars were actually destroyed, whereas we at least see Yoshi turning Raphael Raven into a constellation and say that Bowser upscales from that. Also, keep in mind that the FEB was powered by the Chaos Emeralds, so this is further stating that Bowser should be comparable to their power, and thus the animation would be 1-to-1 with the Death Egg scene. Just replace Yoshi with, Birdo! Speed of the Power Stars versus speed of Solaris. Once again, going off of Death Battle's own logic of putting both at infinite multiversal, these speeds are comparable in their opinion. Though the conclusion never comes back to this, the analyses state that one happened at a faster rate than the other, and despite my discrepancy with the speed thing, it is ultimately a minute nitpick of the presented research, so for this one, I suppose your mileage may vary. Kamek versus Metal Sonic. This is the only time where the animation slightly contradicts the episode's conclusion, because they say Kamek is busted, yet Super Neo Metal Sonic puts Kamek out of commission. This could just be a change from the storyboards, but I thought it was worth bringing up. Nonetheless, the analyses make Kamek's abilities very apparent, and we do still see them come into play in the fight, arguably more effectively than anything Metal does. Or at least it's comparable to what Metal accomplishes. Bowser Jr. versus Sage. I mainly bring this one up to talk more about Sage's abilities, as she does have more than what the episode brings up. She can summon the Titans, disrupt enemy technology, and lock people in cyber cages. I'm perfectly fine with Sage not doing any of this in the fight because her actions fit her role perfectly, but Jr. didn't get to use any of his mechs, and Sage is probably why. Honestly, Sage makes a lot of Eggman's other opponents pretty unfun debate-wise, because if the enemy has literally any tech, Sage can just disrupt it all at once. Rip Wily Nefarious, I guess. Oh, and I don't think the team would agree that banishing Bowser's army to cyberspace would be a strong win condition because, womp womp. King Boo versus Infinite. Yes, I'm really going there, but stay with me. The G1 blog made this comparison first, and I do want to call out Team Bowser when they said that the Boos should be able to resist the effects of Infinite Sun because they don't die to, flashlights. Fellas, is a typical $5 flashlight just as bright as the fucking sun? However, if you looked at this motion graphic I posted earlier, you might notice that I left out another win condition on Bowser's end, that being King Boo's paintings. Remember how I said Sage could steal people in cyber cages? King Boo can also do that and then some. When he seals someone in a painting, they're also immobilized and can only be freed by some kind of dark light technology, something that I don't think Eggman has any equivalent to. So I'd say that these would even out in a way. King Boo could seal away members of Bowser's army, while Infinite Sun would make for some useful AoE and get rid of all the Boos at once. With the animation, we see the Phantom Ruby clearly affecting and even eliminating many soldiers from the Koopa Troop, but because of his gravity manipulation, King Boo is unaffected and is able to turn it around. If he used the Phantom Ruby to do anything else, it would probably be dealt with by someone other than King Boo. Koopalings versus Hard-Boiled Heavies. Well, we already know why this one wasn't included in the fight. The Koopalings were in the storyboards, but Moro chose not to animate them because of how much was already on his plate. And add the Hard-Boiled Heavies into the mix and it's probably for the best that we didn't get this in the animation. Though, it would be interesting to see their magic and tech play off of one another, but no need to bloat the fight. And there you go. Just to reiterate, this is merely my assumptions for the research team's logic. I still wouldn't agree with them on some of these points, but that shouldn't lead me to claiming that their opinion isn't valid. And I would like to point out that, no matter how it may feel, the toxicity and doom posting surrounding this debate is still a vocal minority. Do you want to know what the majority of people think about this dumb question. Do you want to know what the majority of Sonic fans said during this episode's aftermath? They were good sports about their loss. Like, I'm sure there are a handful of strong reactions here and there, but it did not stop them from praising the episode's writing, music, or fight animation. Plus, it's easy to forget that, in this day and age, a large chunk of Sonic fans are also Mario fans, and vice versa. Funny that I get to say that out loud. Remember when Nintendo and Sega were the fiercest competitors of the console wars? Remember how Mario and Sonic fans were like oil and water? Not sure how many kids today remember that, but I sure do. I may be a 2000s kid instead of a 90s kid, but I was still well aware of the hostility Mario fans had towards Sonic fans. As someone who grew up loving both series unconditionally, I kind of always felt like an odd man out. But no matter how loud the vocal minority gets, no matter how much toxicity breaches the island of our minds, no matter how many contrarians show up in the comment section of this video, it's gonna lose to the unwavering optimism every single time. That's probably why Bowser vs. Eggman resonates with so many people. It feels like it doesn't matter if a versus debate gets toxic, or if you disagree with someone else's opinion. The things we admire and respect will always shout louder than the voices that tear them down. Ironic how this message is functionally being told by villains, but I don't think Death Battle is any stranger to being villainized. They know how to expose our soft spots for some good-ass entertainment, even if we don't know how to process the climate surrounding it. But when we finally see the light shining in that climate, you know what they say, make way for the king, because he's got a master plan, and I can't imagine anything stopping it from coming to fruition anytime soon. But I find your lack of Scratch and Grounder versus Dr. Goomba Tower disturbing.